Yes. So once again, comrades, feel most welcome. This is Consciousness Study Group, which is of course a class and a philosophy class where every Thursday we study the philosophy and ideology of Osega Dr. Kwame Nkrumah from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. That's GMT. And every Saturday, of course, we have a session on Africa unification into one continental government that do take place every Saturday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We also have a Kiswahili language class for the unification of Africa in terms of language that do take place every Tuesday from around 6 p.m. GMT to 8 p.m. GMT. So once again, my name is Comrade Pidgin Odimwengu. I am the co-chair of Consciousness Study Group, and with me are some of the members of Consciousness Study Group that have joined us today, and more will be joining us as we move along. The discussion, the topic of our discussion today is, of course, neocolonialism, the last stages of imperialism, which is, of course, a writing of Kwame Nkrumah, alongside the main writing that we do every Thursday, which is Conscientism. So if you have never come across Conscientism, it's a book of Kwame Nkrumah, and we do the review and the study every Thursday. Nkrumah wrote other books, including, of course, Africa Must Unite, The Vision for Liberation, and so many other books. But the key books that are very important to our aspects and our liberation, unification, and development as Africa is, of course, Conscientism Study, which is the philosophy and ideology for decolonizing Africa, Neocolonialism, the last stages of imperialism, which is the total liberation of Africa from neocolonial bondage and yokes, especially economically, and also the unity of Africa, which is very paramount for us. So once again, comrades, I want to welcome you to this class once again, and it's our pleasure to have you. I want to give a bit direction on how we'll be conducting our discussion today, being that it is actually an open discussion today. It's an open discussion. We call it an open forum. So being an open forum, it means that members will be allowed to come in, but in order for you to come in, kindly raise up your hand anytime you want to come in. But it will be guided with some quotes, some text that I will be reading from the book Neocolonialism. And the main book and the main text that starts us off is this text on the screen, which it says, in order to halt foreign interference, that is Conscientism, this Neocolonialism book, page 187, on the subtopic Mechanisms of Neocolonialism. And it says in the first paragraph, as is seen in my screen here, it says, in order to halt foreign interference in the affairs of developing countries, it is necessary to study, understand, expose, and actively combat neocolonialism in whatever guise it may appear. For the methods of neocolonialism are subtle and varied. They operate not only in the economic field, but also in the political, religious, ideological, and cultural sphere. So once again, this will be the basis of our study in regards to neocolonialism. And before we move further to other quotes that we'll be bringing forth, I'd like each and every member who might feel like he or she can actually to explain to us some of the example on how neocolonialism operates in the economic angle of Africa, in the political angle, in the religious angle, in the ideological angle, in the cultural angle to start us off. So that will be the first start of our conversations today. So if you are free to actually explain to us or expound to us your thinking in regards on how do you feel neocolonialism is controlling Africa economically, or politically, or religiously, or ideologically, or culturally, kindly feel free to raise up your hand, and I'll be calling you upon to come forth and give your positions. After that, we'll be going to other quotes and other texts from this book that will actually be guiding the content of our discussion today. As I've said, it's an open forum, and you are free to share your mind and your thinking. Anybody else who is now ready to start us off by sharing that aspect, just feel free to raise up your hand. Welcome, Sister Mayra, one of the Conscious Study class member. I see you here. Welcome, Ras Pala from South Africa. Welcome, Kabala from SUP. I see you here. Father Wariguru from Kenya. Welcome, Coco from Lesotho. Welcome, Sister Shola from Gambia. Welcome. I see Prince Coco from Ghana. Welcome. No. Kindly mute yourself as you join us. Mute yourself, please. I see other comrades joining us here. I see Ras Lawrence, welcome. I see Sister Nyagudi from Kenya, welcome. I see Victor Tieno from Kenya, welcome. I see Honorable Madondo from Nigeria, I hope so, welcome. And I see other comrades of Kenya from Uganda, welcome. I see Sister Marie, she says from the Caribbean, welcome. Of course, Brother Cook, I've mentioned you, from Brother Kabbalah from Congo, but in South Africa, from SUP, all of you feel most welcome. As I've said, this is an open discussion we're having today. Comrade Patrick, welcome. Said Ngony, welcome. Chinoy, F19, kindly confirm your name and change your name. Afyong, also kindly change your name to the correct name, or actually make your cameras be on so that we can see you. And many other comrades that will be joining us. Feel most welcome. Leonard, of course, our conscious study class member from Nigeria, I believe so, welcome. And also Anane Jeffather, you're all welcome. Of course, Hudson is also welcome to this class. Thank you very much. So as you've said, this is an open conversation, and this is the text that is guiding us. So would you like to share anything in regards to that text that is highlighted in yellow? I've read it already. If you feel that there's something you want to speak about in that text, kindly feel free to or unmute yourself and share something in regards to that text shared in the screen or on the screen. Anybody? This is what we do in our class. We always ask people to share their own thinking. So it's not a lecture or actually a teaching class, but it's you to share what you think or what you get out of this text. Anybody? If there's nobody, I'll be moving to the next quotes that are in this book. Of course, this is the startup quotes that we are having, but we'll be having more quotes that are coming up from this book that will be actually interesting enough for us to cover, and I'll be able to move very fast so that we can discuss. But basically, we are discussing neocolonialism today. So what do you have in mind? What do you think you want to share with us in regards to this? But we'll be expounding further in regards to the text that will be coming across. So let me check. Yes, we'll be starting from here. And this is the introduction of this book. The first quote here is that the essence of neocolonialism is that the state which is subject to it is in theory independent and has all the outward trappings of international sovereignty. In reality, its economic system and thus its political policy is directed from outside. Who would like to come in at this particular moment, maybe to comment on this text? Anybody? Feel free to unmute yourself and speak. Yes, Victor Tieno, kindly welcome. Proceed.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Yeah, so I wanted to make a comment on regards to the economic system that I've just seen. That I'm seeing so many important, like there's something that I'm seeing concerning the sovereignty and the economic system. In fact, this evening I've been like looking into this as a very, very key pillar, not just beyond then like I'm saying that it needs to be beyond the normal setting. As we all know that as a continent, especially Africa now, like there's something that we need to design, and our economic system need to be more of systematic in a way that performance need to be measured in metrics or in a given way that it can't go beyond. I would love to refer to more. I always love to say that there is a solidarity. It's called social solidarity for economy. Is more where people are always at the center. That's most of the youth
Comrade,
moving out of the. Yes, yeah.
Your device is bringing some problem with connection. Kindly work on it. I know you will always have the problem. Can you change? Can you switch your device?
Okay.
Kindly switch and come back, please. Switch. Anybody want to come in to comment on that text in regards of course, economics? Yes, Brother Patrick, come in, please.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, comrade.
Yes, sir. I'm Patrick, Ghana.
You're welcome, Patrick. Do you want to comment on the text on the screen?
Yes, I wanted to put a suggestion across.
Kindly do.
Yes, sir. You know, we are a lot of countries as a continent. So I'll plead that if a comrade wants to put a suggestion or maybe raise a point, at least your name and the country you are speaking from, so that at least we familiarize ourselves. That's my point.
Thank you very much. That is noted, and I hope it will be followed.
Thank you, sir.
Can you proceed with your comments in regards to the text? Anybody would like to comment on this text, which says that the essence of neocolonialism is that the state in which is subject to it is in theory independent and has all the outward trappings of international sovereignty, in reality, its economic system and thus its political policy is directed from outside. Who would like to comment on this or share his thinking in regards to that text? That's what we'll be doing today, actually expounding on this book a bit and give people opportunity to share what they think in regards to this text by Nkrumah. Anybody who would like to share any comments in regards to that? Want to have a lively conversation as an open conversation, not a lecture conversation. It's where you come in, give your input, somebody give their input. Sister Shola, Kelly, come in.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to look at this, I guess maybe from the economic angle. If a sovereign nation does not have an economic system in place, it necessarily has to depend on outsiders to help it along. So the fact that a country can be independent does not mean they are economically or politically sovereign. So I think that it may be what this text is trying to say. Thank you.
But is it true in the African context? Are we really economically independent or politically independent despite of what they so-called independence, which so many people have been referring as a flag and an anthem? Are we really economically as a continent independent or politically as a continent independent? Sister Shola, if you would like to comment further.
Yeah, there are the international world has an economic system, and they also have the political system. The African system may be more tradition now in that, you know, the barter system and all the traditional ways we've done economic, we've traded in the past. But the world order, which would be the economic system which governs the Western world, the Asian world, we do not have that. Even if we do have that, it's not as organized as the Western world. So if it is not organized and you are only at the table because you claim to be an independent nation, it does not mean you understand how the system works. And it does not mean the fact that you are at the table, it doesn't mean that you would be part of the inner circles of whatever discussion is going on. So the fact that we say we are a sovereign nation or Africa is, it just doesn't add up. We haven't gotten to that point yet, where if we had our system and it's working perfectly, then we can say we are no longer dependent on an economic system that is free-flowing, that is world recognized.
Thank you, Sister Shola. I'm seeing some few people are interested to join in the conversation. Yes, this is how we are taking the conversation. And this is how we'll be moving in the next almost 2 hours. So, Ras Lawrence, can you come in?
Greetings, everyone. I am currently in the United States, New York. My future plan is to be in Ghana. Ghana being environmentally friendly to we, the Black people who have been taken, coming back home. Thus far, we see how far they will go, but right now, they have been responsive. Now, the statement by Nkrumah, we have to look at time and place. The ferment that was going on in that time period was the possibilities. So there was an assemblage of independence that was there at that time period, that one was in control of their country. But on the onslaught of what happened in the Congo and the terrorism that get placed in from the outside to try to maintain and put in their lackeys or those that will commit and do their job for them was being planted. But the assemblage of independence of running your own country was in full speed. So we have to appreciate the time and the space that language was spoken. Now, what is to be done? What is to be done from here is that we who are in those countries like Ghana, for example, have to produce a basic necessity. food, clothing, and shelter. That is what economic must mean for us. Economic cannot be anything other than fancifulness, other than those basic things being met and satisfied. Then we can speak to the situation. So I would urgently suggest that we talk about how we're going to be able to feed and clothe the people, our own people, before we can start thinking about other things like that. Modern infrastructure can be easily added. Concrete and cement we control. We can manufacture that on our own continent in our own ways. So the only thing is missing is the deliberate decision makers for us to get around to make those decisions that we want these things and we want it unconditionally for everyone and working smarter. I'll leave it there. Give thanks, Chair.
Thank you, comrades. Give thanks for your contribution. But I think even in essence of time and space, the conditions has not yet changed. Of course, now many Africans claim to be independent or countries claim to be independent. But it's still true that the economic systems or political system of political policies in Africa is not independent. And the practice of democracy, or so-called the Western democracy, which to my position is not even being practiced in Africa. What we practice in Africa is even far away from democracy. But check our political system in Africa. Is it really true? Every time and again, you realize African complaining of bribed or corrupt elections, unfair elections, either the puppets being installed by the West. The Western countries seem to have to come in to verify our elections and say they were free or fair. If they haven't given their report, then it's not free and fair. They have to come and observe our election. We don't go in their country to observe the elections, but they come here to observe our elections. Check out our economic system. We still use their monetary system, the fiat cash system, where we use their money system or whatever banking systems, you see. So in reality, despite of time and space, things haven't changed. In fact, they have become worse in African context today than they were before. There are so many, of course, freedom of us exchanging or buying within ourselves, but buying using which monetary system? Their monetary system. There's a presence of us participating in political system or political elections and whatever and assemblies, but which political policy or political system is their political system installed in Africa? So don't believe, despite of time and space changing, but the context of these texts is still relevant today, because I don't think actually we have actually moved around or moved far away from achieving our economic liberation, not that we achieve our political liberation. But let me hear what Sister Mary has to say. Sister Mary, can I come in?
Right, Grand Rising, everyone. Yes, I've taken several points from the discussion and the actual quotation shows. I'm going to try and go through them really quickly because economic development is one of my bugbears. Okay, so first of all, from someone who has a lot of African historian friends, yeah. What I've surmised is a lot of the systems that they call their own are merely plagiarized systems from indigenous peoples, including Africans, going way back to sort of ancient time, right? So it's like cocoa they get from Ghana, all right? They fill it with poison, call it chocolate, and then sell it back to us as if they invented the damn thing, right? And at a much higher price than they bought the raw materials. And, they do it on several levels. Even the education system, we know the first university, to crop up was in Africa, okay? The Africans trained many of their so-called philosophers, their best, and ancient philosophers, etc. And nothing has really changed, okay? We're not separate, sovereign nations. How can we be sovereign nations when we're actually not going by our traditional, indigenous, or ancient names, okay? We're corporate entities which are registered by these people, right? Who stole our land, who stole everything that moved, right? Where African people were concerned. And that's got to be, in order to actually cut the umbilical cord, we really need to think about how we're going to, present ourselves in terms of our name, our appellation, how we're going to present ourselves to the rest of the world. I mean, I can't be saying I'm not my father's daughter or I'm not my foster parents' daughter if I'm still using their surname. Yeah, they're still acting like foster or adopted parents to us because we haven't officially severed the links. Okay, the whole economic system is internationally geared to devoiding Africans of their resources and keeping us enslaved, not only in Africa, but right across the diaspora, wherever they exist. And what they teach as economics at school and university is a lie, right? That is just their outer agenda. They have an inner agenda, which they don't talk about, by which they run the world. We're capable of self-sufficiency, right? Even on an individual basis. In Africa, in the Caribbean, you know, in parts of America where you get African populations, etc. We have arable land. We can till the land, okay? We can build industries based on agriculture, from growing seeds to, you know, engineering, etc., etc. Yeah. And we must, the thing is, we must see things from a 360 degrees perspective, which is how we were taught in ancient times and how we still operate mentally when we work for them. You know, when you get a black man doing a job, right, he always does it from a holistic perspective. Yeah, they've even taken our systems and they're introducing them in the education system in Britain, where I'm based. Okay. And you know, they're calling it holistic this and holistic that, and if you don't assess holistically, then you're not holistic, you know, you're not assessing properly. And we've been doing this for centuries, right? And we've got to claim back, we've got to own back our status and our rights, you know, and what was originally ours. Okay. Of course, we need infrastructure in health, agriculture, roads, etc. That goes without saying. Yeah. And that's basically, you know, what they call international law in, you know, in the West is ancient African law, right? It's Moorish law, etc. It's common law, which is commercial law, which is Moorish law, which is African law. And until we go back to base and reclaim those systems and expose the lie, right, that they're selling to us economically and legally, we're going nowhere. Yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my sister. Of course, Sister Maria. Hope you're connecting from the Caribbean.
No, I'm in London. I'm in London. Yeah. I was born in the Caribbean. Yeah, did part of my primary school in the Caribbean, but I was raised in England. But you know, we never forget who we are.
Thank you very much, sister. Yes, indeed, I appreciate the efforts of us, Lawrence, trying to come back to Africa. In Ghana, we do appreciate that, and everybody who's coming back, we appreciate that, because indeed, here is home, and has always been home. So you're most welcome. I will be going to Brother Coco, but before I go to Brother Coco, I'll be reading this text also on the screen. It says that so long as neocolonialism can prevent political and economic conditions for optimum development, the developing countries, whether they are under neocolonialist control or not, will be unable to create a large enough market to support industrialization. In the same way, they will lack the financial strength to force the developed countries to accept their primary products at a fair price. This is what we see. Sister yes, talk about Coco leaving Ghana and going back there and then come back in the name of chocolate. They buy it cheaply. In Kenya here, they buy our theater very cheap price, and then they bring it back expensively, because we are not actually able to think on how we can have the large economics of scale. If we can control our economy actually and unite our economy, it will be very hard for us to do. But let me hear what Brother Coco has to say. Brother Coco, I know you're joining us from London, but home is Lesotho. Welcome.
Thank you very much, brother, and revolutionary greetings to all of you, brothers and sisters, tonight. Thank you for a very stimulating discussion. I would like to salute all of the speakers who have already contributed. I agree totally with what they said. I come from Lesotho, and Lesotho being surrounded or fully encircled by South Africa, it means we depend fully on South Africa. So anything they say, if South Africa, what did they say? They say it coughs or we catch the cold. If South Africa coughs, we catch the cold. In 1986, the prime minister who had been resisting the apartheid government in South Africa for a while was toppled internally by a military coup at that time. But events leading to that military coup were that the South Africans, they closed the borders with Lesotho. Even though he had shielded the ANC for quite a while, there was nothing he could do with regards to the enemies within. So the fact that they controlled what was happening in Lesotho at that time, you could call Lesotho a neo-colonialist economy at that time. And I'm worried that it still is because of the borders, the way Lesotho is in South Africa. Moving away from Lesotho, let's talk about South Africa themselves. They are the last country in Africa to get flag and national anthem independence. What did they get? They got political independence in quotes. But where is the economy? Who holds a sway in their economy? Someone else, a very small minority of people who accumulated all of this capital during the time when South Africa was unjust. Lots of majority were dispossessed. They continue to be dispossessed even today. So when the South Africans got independence, they thought things were going to change materially for them. But unfortunately, things continued to change. So from the outside, South Africa looks like they are independent, but unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. They tried with the Black economic empowerment when they started, but some of the companies which were subject to that Black economic empowerment took them to court and won, especially an Italian one. That Italian company, it meant they continued with whatever they were doing, the way they wanted to do it. In fact, South African government wanted to not for their loss to be made public, because then it will have given an idea for all the other companies that this is the way to go against South African government. So the bottom line here is that with neocolonialism, we, the people of the land, who are supposed to own our resources, do not have access to our resources, unfortunately. Someone else does. And with regards to Africa, it's simple. Africa was under colonialism. When we got independence, we thought we will have all the power, but that power rests somewhere else. There are lots of companies in that book which shows how they got the capital, how they continue to dominate resources in Africa. And that is unfortunately how it goes. And that is what Dr. Nkuma was talking about, essentially, when he said the essence of that is that the state which suffers from that looks to have everything going for them, but it isn't. And the best professor who I would like to recommend for people who haven't watched his videos is Professor Richard Wolff. He talks about the economies of colonialism, part 1 and part 2. And part 2 of that talks about this neo-colonialism. Let's take the case of Kenya, for instance. Kenya has a lot of arable land, but before colonialism, they were selling tea or coffee to England. They still do that up until now. Why? Because their resources, they still rest with someone else who rests somewhere, maybe in England here. And Kenya is not using its resources for inward development. So here's why you see some of the African countries have rich land, but they are not self-sufficient in food production because they have been told continue producing cash production and cash crops. And those cash crops are being imposed on them from outside. Then there is something called the IMF and the World Bank. the institutions which were formed at Bretton Woods in 1940, 44, 45. None of the African countries were independent at that time. And we continue to go with that system as if it was meant for us. It was never meant for us. And we are going to fail. Debt levels in Africa are rising again because we are not trading amongst ourselves as Africans. Tell me why. The intra-African trade is pittance because we continue to trade with the colonial masters that we had because the infrastructure was meant for that, and it continues to be like that. Hence, the companies which they formed prior to independence, they continue to dominate all of our resources. That's materially what neocolonialism is about. And when Dr. Nguma wrote this, he had suffered a blow in Congo because he saw Congo as critical for Africa's development, Africa's unity, but he lost to the CIA and the Belgians because of what they were doing at that time, something which not everyone can see from the outside. That's the thing. It's invisible. This system is invisible. It's so bad, it's invisible. But there are other professors who said the economics which we learn is meant for us to continue sustaining that same system. The education we have in Africa is meant only to continue sustaining that colonial system. It's time that we decolonize. If we decolonize our minds, decolonize our education, decolonize our politics, our governance, then can we get back what is ours, again control. Thank you for now.
Thank you, Brother Coco. I think you, before I go to other, I know some of the speakers have actually been expressing interest to come on board, but you've reminded me to look back to this report that was shared by Warren Want that was investigating 101 listed companies in the Stock Exchange of London in 2016. And if you check the preface of this context, if you can be able to read it, I don't know if I'll be able to expound it further, but I'm interested for you to check on the preface, on the highlighted part here. Permit me to highlight it. It seems that it may not be going where I want it to go, but let me check how I'll do it. Yes, something like this. So permit me to share this screen. Sorry. You see, it says that this was a report that was listed in 2016 by the London Warren Want. It says that Africa, the continent of Africa, is today facing a new colonial invasion with less devastating in scale and impact than that which it suffered during the 19th century. As before, the new colonialism is driven by a determination to plunder the natural resources of Africa, especially its strategic energy and mineral resources. At the forefront of this scramble for Africa are British companies actively aided by and abetted by the UK government. This report revealed the degree on which British company controls Africa's key mineral resources, notably gold, platinum, diamond, copper, oil, gas, coal, and it documents that it goes ahead to go somewhere. Let me check where it says here. It says that under the guise of UK helping Africa in its economic development, a mere continuum of the colonial pattern narrative, $134 billion have flown into the continent each year in the form of loan, foreign investment, and aid. However, the British government has aided and abetted extraction of $192 billion from Africa in mere profits. It goes ahead a bit in this report, which is very important for you to look at, and gives the listing here that the results of this review is staggering. As many as 101 companies listed in the London Stock Exchange in the sub-Saharan country, covering 37 countries. And what it says is that these 101 companies are now controlling an identifier of 1.05 trillion worth of resources, dollars, in Africa, just in 5 commodities, oil, gold, and whatever. And the timelines are here. They control 6.6 billion barrels of oil. They control 79.5 million ounces of gold. They control 699.3 million of carat of diamond, and they control 3.6 billion tons of coal, and also they control 287 million ounces of platinum. Back to our settings, and let me go to the hands that are up now to give the opportunity also to come in. Permit me to start with, let me check on this order. Let me start with the Father Wariguru. Brother Coco, hope you've spoken, unless you want to come back. But permit me to go to other people, then you come back later. Let me go to Brother Wariguru, then Father Wariguru. Kindly come in, Wariguru. Then you go to Victor, then you go to Myra, in that order. Then Hudson. Wariguru? Father Wariguru.
Hello, yes. I didn't see where to unmute, but now I'm in. So thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, comrade.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm so glad to have joined these great comrades, and I've really liked, and I'm listening to what great minds are saying. People from Nigeria, people from Caribbean, and everywhere. So I just had one point to share on the consciousness class, and also the issue of neocolonialism, and whether we are really independent. And from my experience, from my global experience of traveling around, I can say one of the things that can make a people independent is, first of all, the food security. So if you visit a nation where majority of the people cannot feed themselves, then automatically you can't use the word independent. So, and I think that is the experience of many, or almost all the nations that have blacks. So I think that is one of the areas that I felt like we need to speak about, the issue of food security. Like our country here in Kenya, you realize that the majority of the young people are below maybe the ones that we say the bracket of the youths, let's say 40 to 25. Look at what they are doing today. They are just as consumers. They are all on borders, transport industry, mechanics and that, but very few.
Comrade Guru, we are getting a lot of background noise from your side, so kindly work on your background. Have some cool background so that you can come back and share with us. A background that's not noisy enough. Let me go to Hudson.
Okay.
Let me go to Hudson first, and then I'll come back to you. Your background need to work on the background to be somewhere quite a bit. So Hudson?
Yeah, thanks so much. The topic that we are discussing so far is the topic that most of the time we need to center. Western world, they are playing very, very strict game with Africans. They are coming to Africa with a friendly face, with a friendly voice, with money to cheat us. So most of the time we do say what they are doing, but they pretend and they are ready to destroy us. The time we are meeting here, they follow us, and whatever we shared here is it's their plan to start. How can they can destroy us? So we need to change strategies. There are hypocrisy, there are trick. We need to use the same strategy, because failing to use their strategy, we cannot conquer them. We need to pretend to be friends. We need to pretend that we are in their system. We need to pretend that we are not humans. But we should tell them at the end that from our pretense, we will make something which is outstanding. We are talking about policies. Policies are there, but who is enforcing those policies? Are Africans. So we cannot shout for policies. Let policies be there, but don't enforce those policies to Africans. So we need to have leaders who think with a reasoning. They can give me an injection for COVID. They can give me whatever to kill Africa. If I dump them in the toilet, who will suffer? The someone who funded those. But most of we Africans, we are learning for money, we are learning for friendship, we are learning for favor. At the end, we betray one another. So we need to move that intention of betrayal. We need to have a strategy, the same strategy they are using to us. They are coming to us in a friendly voice. We need to welcome them with a friendly voice. But inside of us, we should show them that we are not friends, as they are doing to us. When we're talking about school, when we're talking about economy, we have graduates and they know the systems. But when they get employed with those companies, they're implementing the same systems. Look, that is a very, very shame thing. You can be employed with a big company. What should you do there? Pretend and make rosters for that company to run away from Africa. If you are promoting that company to make a lot of profits while you are manager of that company, it's a shame for you because you are betraying your country. Some that are betraying their countries because of secret societies. I do talk with this most of the time because spiritual world has more power with this life we are living, and to control a mind of someone it's a very, very big value to have in this world. They print our money. They can print quachas. They can print lands. Any money they can print, and those money will be used with them when they are visiting us. So our economy, we know very. Our economy is at worst poise because some of Africans, they support those systems, they support those policies, they buy friendship from Europeans, from West. But we need Africans, those who can work with West in a pretense way. Let us pretend. Yeah.
Thank you. You've raised a point that's bringing me back to this quote that I've shared in the screen here, that says that in their tactics of neocolonialism, in the first place, the rulers of neocolonial states, probably our presidents and our politicians, derive their authority to govern not from the will of the people, probably through elections we see around, that people go for election in the name of popular election, but probably their power do not come from the will of people, but from the support they obtain from their neocolonial masters. And I think this is very clear. We realize and we complain that our elections have been interfered by the West or whatever. It goes as to say, they have therefore little interest in the developing education. These leaders who come out from this process, or strengthening the bargaining power of their workers employed by expatriate firms, or indeed of taking any step which will challenge the colonial pattern of commerce and industry, which in its object of neocolonialism to preserve aid. Therefore, to a neocolonial state is merely a revolving credit paid by the neocolonial master, passing through neocolonial state and returned back to the neocolonial master in the form of increased profit. And this is what we see all over. Our presidents or our leaders who are elected through a process that we do complain every day, that is either manipulated by the system or by the West, and the elections have been rigged or stolen. And somebody says in Africa, it's very hard for you to get a free and fair election. Then these leaders come in, they take us to IMF and World Bank in the name of going to actually borrow loans from there so that they can actually come and develop us, and then we pay heavily. So these are the context of what is being discussed here. But permit me to introduce Father Waiguru if your background is now clear so that you can speak. Before now I moved back to Victor, and then I'll go to the King Maudi. If you are interested to give any opinion, kindly feel free to raise up your hand so that I
yes,
can
comrade.
Yes.
Greetings, comrade. I'm just joining, but however, I heard Comrade Hassan make a point that I strongly disagree with, in a sense that our leader, who is Kwame Nkrumah, say we neither face backward or sideways, we only face forward. There is nothing like pretense. We can only move forward. The colonial invader who came onto our land to invade our land to put us in this situation did not pretend. He knew what he wanted, and he came directly and demanded for that and made sure he took it by brute and force. And if we must retaliate, we must really be ready to call a spade, and face forward. That is where we are going currently. Because if we say we are pretending, I'll tell you, there are a lot of leaders who have come to lead in this African country who keep saying that they are pretending to win the game as a strategical reason, but they never, ever end up achieving the results. At the end of the day, we find ourselves deep down in the pit more than we ever find ourselves. So there's nothing like pretense. If we are standing, let's stand erect like the Iroko tree and fight and fight strongly. So that is what I came to meet, and I'm trying to address that based on what our leader, which is Nkrumah, propagated right from day one.
Thank you. Sisi Samari has been referring us to the art of war. Of course, I think Nkrumah was also prepared for war when he wrote the book, Handbook for Revolutionary Warfare. And those are part of the tactics that he gave us. Is a book we need to check on, the book Handbook for Revolutionary Warfare, which is actually the war front of our revolution. But let me check what Father Waiguru has to say before I move to Victor. Father Waiguru?
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to finish up, and sorry for the interruption. Whatever we have discussed about Kwame Nkrumah and whatever he did, the Pan-Africans of that time, I believe what they did, they planted a great seed. And why we are having such a conversation is because of the seed and the spirit they left us. So I think today we are in a different environment, and we can't say that we are going to face the handles that they were facing those days, the Pan-Africans of those days. So I believe during our time, things are we have a bit light. We are able to connect, to communicate. You can imagine at that time, if they were trying to organize a meeting like the one we are having today, it would be impossible. So like if they would rise up today and see that we are having a meeting at the comfort of everybody's home, already they would see it as a miracle. So for me, I highly believe that even if we are talking about not having independent, not being independent, but at least we have some individual, personal independence that you are able to join such a meeting, be able to contribute, give your own contribution. So my point here is, yeah, we are in the right track. We have the greatest group and minds, the consciousness class. But then the only challenge I think we would have at the moment is maybe economic independence. And I believe if we are able to share with our friends, we have other people who are very much economically empowered, who are Africans, wherever they are, whether in Africa or in diaspora, and they have a lot of money. Let me use the word. They are well economically, but they have no time to maybe join in such groups. They have not even, maybe they don't have even able to communicate. So I think even as we meet as people with enlightened mind, we need also to think of our friends who are economically empowered, and we can be able to tell them and share this message so that when now this group is we have the right resources, we are able to start to make things move, not just to meet. Yeah, so that's my take for the word for the book.
Thank you. Before I move to Brother Victor, of course, you've raised economic independence, and on my screen here in one of the page 19, and I'll go back to page 17, it says, a continent like Africa, however much it increases its agricultural output, will not benefit unless it is sufficiently politically and economically united to force the world to pay its fair price for its cash crop. Then let me move up a bit because I want Victor to talk about that economics a bit. Let me move up to this point on point. Let me go back to point here, page 13, which says, Africa is a paradox which illustrates and highlights neocolonialism. Her earth is rich, yet the product that come from the above and below her soil continue to enrich not African predominantly, but groups and individuals who operate to African impoverishment. If you go ahead, it says, it moves, Africa has more than, by that time it was more than 40% of the world potential water power, a great share than any other continent. Yet, less than 5% of this volume has been utilized. Even taking into account the vast desert stretch of the Sahara, there's still in Africa more arable and pasture land than exists in either United States of America or the Soviet Union. There's even more than in Asia. Our forest areas are twice as great as those in the United States. If Africa's multiple resources were used in her own development, they could place her among the modernized continents of the world. But her resources have been and still being used for the greater development of overseas interest. Let me hear what Brother Victor has to say on this. Then I will move to Russ, Lawrence, and then maybe come back to Dekin Mauli. You're free to join this conversation. It's an open conversation. Just raise your hand so that I can put you in the listing of those who want to speak. Yes, Brother Victor?
Okay, thank you. I hope now I'm clear, right?
Yes, you are clear.
Thank you so much. So I'll start beginning by saying that economic system is more of three-sided, especially in terms of its development. So the first aspect is the military, the political leadership, and also the corporate aspect of the country. So realize that in the continent of Africa, all these things are somehow, or there is over-dependency of each. For example, you realize that the military part of the continent still has to more buy weapons in a weapon dollar thing. So like the world runs in a system whereby for you to buy a weapon, it has to be on a dollar. So the weapon dollar makes that to some point, economic system has to be still influenced. In the corporate world, I think we all know how the multinationals have already taken a bit of our economy in terms of how they are running each and every sector. For example, if you look at the agriculture itself, which we believe has been a very key pillar in our economy, is being serviced, and almost everything that you have to put in your soil has to be bought. And that continuously makes us dependent on even what we consider to be our potential. So corporate, in terms of the corporate world, or how we've been juggling to be adjusting with the world, we all know that Africa was recruited to join the global economic system, especially after the Europe, the US had gone through over 50 years of the agrarian, agricultural, and even bit of industrial revolution. So, for example, today Africa, if I have to use an iPhone, but there's a point in Europe where everybody was using like more of like this, like there is a system of growth that was there with them. So the stepwise way into which Africa is today, we like going to look what is happening there, we take, then we try to do, but that's what we are creating within our society is more of not systematic growth. So politically, you realize that when these guys come to the power and they have to put their leadership right, with not pointing fingers at what the corporate world is already setting on, the military is already working, because these are things that will like they keep on being there. Like corporate and military are things like that have to be there. So the only thing we feel like is very important for us to shape the way the economy, because what we know is that politics works in a way that they work on a basis of working on what people can see, actually the mass public. So that is why there's huge promises and giving us a lot of entitlement as young people. And at the end of the day, realize that we feel like we are entitled to be empowered by politicians who still are more of under a systematic framework of that is designed by more of Europe in a way. So what I'll say is that our economic system need to be of productivity, looking us from the point of our initial potential growth. I will never argue in a way that that our people need to start more of saying that I have to do what is happening in the US, in the UK, to be comparatively, we are always going to be at the low. But the issue is, are we able to juggle the potential we have now? Because the best I see as a continent now is that we have what a very, like, there is no any continent in the world that shows the potential of more growth. And these are very big economic potential because Africa adding close to 800 million workers by 2050. It means that these workers are going to be the engineers and people are going to be driving the next economy that no any country is going to be having. So I will say that when we are going to be designing our economic system, the first thing we need to put aside is our emotion as Pan-African, because I always feel like most of our Pan-Africanists I don't know, most, but not all, yeah? We tend to see like it's a very emotional thing, but this is the time that we need to put aside and design people at the center of looking at economic system from the how they have designed it, because when these people were dividing our continent in for 4 months, wherever they were sitting in Berlin, they didn't just by design the boundaries, they designed the economic system, the religion, what we need to be learning, the type of information we need to be fed every time and again, and everything that is going on to today. So our thinking today has to go beyond the normal setting of how they framed us to be, and we are today here. So that's why I'm saying that we have got a very huge task to redesign an economic framework that is going to be playing with the people at the center, because that is the only weapon we have. I hear the brothers say that we have some people with the money. Yes, the money is there, but money is more of a power tool when it's able to be distributed in a very more of an equity or equal manner, which I believe is going to give us the edge. But if the printing is still done somewhere, the monitoring and the control will never be clear. So we are not fighting to do that, to do away with that, but we are fighting to centralize the population that we are having as the best asset and the best weapon to be productive, to be empowered, and to be connected to economic productive value. So I believe that is the most that we're able to design an economic system. Thank you so much. And sorry for the long talk.
Thank you. I'm still waiting for your paper you promised to give me. So I'm waiting for that. Don't worry.
Okay, I'm working on a paper. I'll give it out, but I'm still working on it. I'm working on the cross.
Chair, allow me to ask.
Who is this?
It's Kwame Gonza. Kwame Gonza.
Yeah, Kwame Gonza, even though you're breaching the protocol, but the thing is you're raising on the point of correction or objection or point of information. You see, the parliaments operate like that. So either give your point of.
Yes, I wanted to ask from the speaker who has just left the platform, what he means by Pan-Africanism is emotion, and what does he consider an emotion when it comes to Pan-Africanism? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. You talk of African approaching economics and emotional angle. What do you mean?
Yes.
You're having poor network. Can I allow you to come back later and try to work on your network, because you are on and off? Victor, if you can hear me, can you come back later, but not that question. Kwame, hope you will be able to answer that question before we leave, so that I can move to the next speakers whose hands are up here. Let me go to Ras Lores, then Sister Shola, then I'll come back to Mauli. And in case you have something to raise
so what I mean is very simple.
Okay, Victor?
I can get you. I can get you. Okay. Yes, I was saying that the emotional aspect of it is very, in fact, even the point of you raising that, I don't feel like is like to some extent, realize that Pan-African is, we just need to like, they have to do this, like there's that forceful aspect of it that we do, but realize that the level to which we are submitting is just good, but to some extent, it's full of emotion. Like we feel like there is that emotional aspect of us that we have to inflict into someone so that he's able to conform in the same. But we just need to put things on a reality that somebody has to see the angle of point that we are pushing, because these are same that I suffered it so much at the beginning of it all, and I've also seen a lot of people that you have to put an image of more of emotional state, so that somebody to put without giving a clear, precise reason why somebody need to understand and look forward to. This is a very, very important critical area, and that is
Victor,
what I just mean by that. It's not a very big deal, but it's just a
request.
Yeah.
I'll request you to put your answer of the text in the chat so that we can be able to understand what you mean emotionally on the chat, so that we can actually analyze your statement on what you mean emotionally on the chat. Because I know we are also controlled emotionally. The Western system of economics is controlling us emotionally. It's actually inflicting a lot of us. Capitalism is never a cup of tea to us. It's controlling us emotionally and inflicting more emotions and danger to us, and they make us more poor for their own expense. But permit me to request you to put your points on that emotional approach to economics on the chat so that we can critically analyze it, put it on some wordings. But let me go to Russ Lawrence, then I will move to Sister Shola. Russ Lawrence, can you come in?
Yes, give thanks, greetings. Hearing all of what is being said, racism, self-hate, racism against self, tribalism, or familyism is the order of the day for the continent of Africa and Black people everywhere. We cannot try to liberate ourselves by using the systems that's been given to us. The enemy have no interest in giving us the tools to liberate ourselves. It is not in their interest to do that. So until we go back and rebuild what we must do, the Sankofa methodology of going back to where we come from and understand how come we lost the battle for a continent with billions of people. We lost, and they were able to conquer us and maintain it for hundreds of years. And now we have digested it. South Africa, for example. South Africa is the hate against its own color, Black people from coming across the border. There is the fight against it. The maintenance of white supremacy in South Africa as we speak, with political power given to so-called Black folks, but economic power is retained. The land is still retained. For years, the so-called ANC have talked about dividing back the land, but they're afraid to take back the land and said here and redistribute it. So that's one microeconomic we must take a look at. We must look at all these other countries where we are seeing in Ghana, for example, the founding of lithium or other type of minerals, not to mention gold. And they're willingly giving other people to develop it instead of developing it within ourselves. We still have not invested in our young people to learn the basic process of manufacturing, to be able to not even to sell to outside of abroad, because you cannot compete. The reason why South Africa is an example, you can't compete with diamonds or with other, even oil, is because they can decide that they're not going to buy it. So you must develop enough for self-use. And the reason why COVID came around was in the midst of us having the plan to be able to do that economic self-trade amongst each other, which is a danger and a threat to Black empowerment and to the world economy. And add to that, we must also take into account that we won't even support when our other so-called countries, even though we are the border country, takes liberation. Nigeria wanted to invade Burkina Faso and these other countries that are liberating themselves, trying to justify that it's terrorism or this is that and this is that. Liberation is liberation. We must learn from what's going on right now with the Palestinian people. Their land was colonized and was given over to a permanent colonizer, the Borg. I know I'm speaking of South Africa, but I'm speaking about the so-called Jews or Israelis, those Zionist Jews or invaders who was given the task to maintain power so they could have a power base in that region. And now they are wantonly killing people. For 30,000 people is now buried underneath the rubbles of that country in a what is that, a 25-mile radius piece of land, and the separation of their people, and no one says anything. The morality of the world has been transformed. We have a Putin who took some children out of the war zone and into his own country, and there's a war crime that's out for him that he can't even travel, much less they kill 7,000 babies in Israel and nothing is mentioned. We have an upside down world until we start to look inward and start to rebuild back that Sankofa-ness of reaching back to ourselves, to our dignity, and be able to, then we can start to invest in our children and say we need to build our own weaponry. We need to invent, not, the nuclear bomb was taken out of South Africa because of black people coming into political power. So we got to see the game. How long do we want to play? We want to play socialism, communism. None of that applies. We have to build from scratch what we need, and that is going to be unconditional love for each other and willing to protect ourselves from it by allowing our geniuses to come back to create the tools that's necessary to defend it. We cannot have the African Union not supported by all of the African country economically. We need to send our money to support our standing army. We need to send our soldiers to join the ranks from each of these different 54 countries to join the ranks so that we have a solid army to defend. We need to get rid of the United Nations. The United Nations was a tool that helped, but now it's a colonizing force in its own right. It stand by while murder happened. We need to push the French out of all of those 16 or 15 former French colony. We need to do it, and we need to stand up and make it happen. And every other country need to stand firm and support it. Not want to send soldiers to go and rebuff them when people liberate themselves. All of the above are the tools. You cannot use the enemy's tool to liberate us. And we must love ourselves so much so that we radically accept each other. Give thanks, Sri.
Thank you, comrade. I really wanted to come on something you've said, that the world is indeed upside down and we need to fix it. I think this is what one Matigari to the Matigari Manjirun, and in the book of Dr. Ngugi wa Thiong'o, he talks about that the world is upside down and it's upon us actually to fix it, and there's no way out. Okay, before I move to the lower parts, I know Sister Shola has to come in, but there's what they say here, that nevertheless, Africa unity is something which is within the grasp of African people. And the only effective way to challenge this economic empire and recover possession of our heritage is for us to be able to act on a Pan-African basis through a union government, which is a continental government. No one will suggest that if all the people of Africa combine to establish their unity, the decision could be revoked by the forces of neocolonialism. But the danger, the world peace spring not from the action of those who seek to end neocolonialism, but from the inaction of those who allow it to continue. To argue that the Third World War is not inevitable is one thing. To suppose that it can be avoided by shutting our eyes to the development of situation likely to produce it is quite another matter. Then along it says again, before I move to Sister Shola on the line, this is where I wanted to refer here, where it says that when Africa becomes economically free and politically united, the monopolistic will come face to face with their own working class in their own countries, and a new struggle will rise within the liquidation and collapse of imperialism will be complete. Sister Shola, can you come in to comment on any of those?
Thank you so much, sir. I think going on the last quote that you had, I think this would go well. It says, "He who has the money has the power." As Africans, we are always quick to point our fingers at other people. Oh, it is this person's fault. It could have been this, it could have been that. I think I want to just take an example from a typical tomato seller in the market, in an African market. When one person starts to sell tomatoes and they feel they're making money, somebody else comes again and then puts another basket there selling the same thing, tomatoes. And then there are so many of them, no innovation, no nothing. And then we have a continent of engineers. How the engineers are not able to produce machines that would help process the tomatoes. The tomato seller cannot go to the engineers and say, "Oh, I have tomatoes. Can you design something to help so that you and I can make money to develop our community. This is a typical story of the African. Until we begin to move away from the mindsets where we are looking at ourselves as ordinary tomato sellers with no hope of having machines to process our crops, we will still remain the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sister Shola. Indeed, permit me also to recognize the presence of Sister Ida, Brother Morgan Kominchi, and we also have Sister Eze and the Brother Kama Chunde, who have joined us from Zimbabwe, all parts from Ghana, and all other parts. Welcome, comrades. And yes, you say something that's very important, but let me get back to the King Mauli and also Brother Coco, if you have something to say. But also, members, feel free. This is an open forum today. We are trying to discuss neocolonialism as per the guidance of Kwame Nkrumah, that we must study their ways, and their ways do not only limit themselves in economics, they take along political, religious, technical, and all those aspects of cultural aspects. You see, our culture is being controlled today. We are more of, we want to be the westernized cultural system. If you come to the Africa today, this generation of young people, or the ladies or the young boys who are being born today, they are all dreadlocks in their own head. They don't put on full clothes. They want to put half clothes, and how they behave or how they go along. It's a lot of copy pasting of the Western culture that's going on in Africa, actually eroding the African true culture. If we check, of course, as it has been said in our economics, we embrace much of the economic system, not our economic system. Our politics, we want to play to them. We want to compare our democracy to their democracy. We want to compare our election to their elections. There's a lot that's going on. And of course, technology is being another serious challenge to us. But let me go to Brother the King Maulin, then Brother Coco. I've seen Senator Morgan has also raised his hand and left. If he has anything to say, feel free. So put up your hands. I'll be able to call you in the line as we engage in this and examine this book by Kwame Nkrumah. Yes, the King Mauli.
Okay, bro. Thank you very much. So when Nkrumah came back to Ghana, he realized that the colonial invaders were actually working with our kings and queens. They were actually, economically, this was what they were doing. So Nkrumah strategically putting chalk in his pocket, his bag, walking, imagine many miles all across Ghana, villages through which transport was a problem as at that time, was able to organize the youth, empower them to say, look, your dad is actually doing business with the colonial invaders, which is against your own future, which is going to limit your economic freedom in your future. So if you want to really do something about it, then you need to take power into your hand. So Nkrumah took power from the kings and gave it to the youth. And he empowered them to fight against the colonial invaders. Now, what Nkrumah realized at this juncture was, okay, to be able to restore back power into our kings and queens, for which our culture and tradition need to continue, we need African liberation and to unite as Africans on a continental level to be able to do that. So he was on the verge of uniting Africa, and then he can now give power back to our kings and queens, to which we can now dictate our identity, culture, and tradition, what we really believe in. Hence, that will transform into our economic liberation. So today, fast forward, here you and I are. We are over here on this very platform by virtue of technology. Now, we realize that there are a lot of challenges that we are facing. However, the only good thing we can do with you and I is, first of all, to do right with each other first. It starts from our own backyard before it moves to the other people's who are into business or bigger businesses. So you and I have to take power by, first of all, doing businesses together, understanding that the goal is African unity, and that whatever we do, it affects our unity, that we need to do right by each other, number one. Number two is to deal with our African spirituality, because when you have to do with your identity, for instance, the man who is doing carries beads that you can put on your neck, the one who is doing the African print, the one who is printing, who is cooking the African food, the one who is doing other forms of African dish, in all cultures. If you don't buy from them, we cannot empower ourselves culturally or economically, as it is supposed to be said. So what we need to do is to look at it from our economic point of view after our spiritual identity. What are we doing by ourselves? The colonial invaders know that they are victorious. That is the mindset they are operating with. Do we see ourselves as victorious? First of all, from what we have been through and all the challenges that has been measured upon us, do we see ourselves as victorious, or we see ourselves as victims, that we keep exhibiting the symptoms of those victims to each other all the time by not trusting each other enough to be able to work with each other? This is one thing that we must look at from this level, the basic level of how we deal with each other to be able to empower ourselves economically. I think if we are able to address these basic issues, then we are on the way to our economic freedom. Basically, our kings to date, some of them still have found the code by still dealing with the colonial invaders, still doing businesses with them. There is no way we will win if we still have our kings and traditional leaders doing businesses and giving our lands to these Chinese people and these other races who come into our country. The Chinese man come here, he has in almost all the sector. Let's say, for instance, when the COVID-19 came, I sold idea to one of leading person here in Ghana that, okay, the best way we can do money or make money over here is by creating maybe this COVID vaccine. And bro, comrades, to be honest to you, all the companies that I went to buy goods from were not companies that belongs to Ghanaians over here. 98% of those companies belong to the Western world, the Chinese, the Eastern Bloc and the Western world. Now, who is benefiting? I go there and I see my brothers and sisters who, excuse me to say, who don't even know about themselves. And they are being treated when they are working with these people. They are treated ill, like as if nobody is there to even protect them. All because our educational system, number one, is failed. We've embarked on 3 demonstrations over here to change the curriculum into our African indigenous world education system. Yet, the very educational director over here will not even come out to meet us. So what are we left to do? That means the colonial invader have strong hold over us. So we must find ways and means to unite ourselves economically, to invest into our own projects, to be able to change the status quo. For me, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting. You are raising serious points in terms of Africa's spirituality and the rest. Before I move to Brother Coco, permit me to, of course, also read this script on the screen. That still another neocolonialist trap on the economic front has come to be known as multilateral aid through international organizations. The International Monetary Fund and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the so-called World Bank, the International Finance Corporation, and International Development Association are examples of significantly having US capital as the major backing. These agencies have the habit of forcing would-be borrowers to submit to various offensive conditions, such as supplying information about their economics and submitting their policy and plans for review by the World Bank and accepting agency supervision on their use of loans. This is one of the ways that clearly indicate that we are not actually independent. You see what they do, and this is true. It has been confirmed in Africa here, and particularly sometimes back in Kenya, that before we read our budgets, actually, the foreign ambassadors have to come in, check through it, and ensure that everything else that is in there is meeting their demands and their interests. So these are part of still other aspects of us being colonized. And I would like to ask Brother Coco to come in at this point, probably to touch on this aspect and also to share more on his own thinking. Anybody else who want to speak, feel free to raise up your hands. We are still having around 33 minutes to go. Brother Coco?
Thank you, my brother. And I also want to pay homage or respect to all the speakers that have contributed tonight. My point, before I touch on what you have asked there, is on our own indigenous wisdom. We do have lots of our own education that's locked in our languages, but we don't allow that to come to the fore because we have been told to be the European or an American in a black skin living in Africa. Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o said, we are normalizing the abnormals. By normalizing the abnormals, for instance, here, Africa is the richest continent, but the Africans are poor. That's what also Dr. Nkrumah said. That is an abnormal. Why are the people who live on the richest continent the paupers of the whole world? Why are we constantly beggars, international beggars, yet our continent produces so much? That is the problem of self-hatred. And someone said, these people sat down in Berlin Conference in 1884 to 1885 and actually designed a system that will bind us forever to them in perpetuity. And that system is continuing to yield to them returns years after they left. All right? Then let me depart from there and talk about a man who was called David Livingstone, a missionary. He came to Africa here as a missionary to Christianize our people. Then when he died, he left the 3 messages for the Western world. He said, there is a scourge of Islamic slavery which is happening in Africa at the moment. And to free Africans from that, you will need to introduce trade to the Africans. So what that meant is that we ended up with a system which was designed abroad based on 3 C's. The first one being Christianization, and the second one being civilization, and then the third one being commercialization. You know what happened with Christianization, right? Both Christianization and civilization have taught the African to hate who he is. They taught the African to hate their skin color, to hate their traditions, their customs, their being, their selves, all right? Their spiritualism, and abandon that and go for religion to a God from somewhere else. And Bishop Mafonga said that when he was in Uganda as well. He said, if the Chinese were here first, we would probably have been the Buddhists. Or if the Islamists were here in all of Africa first, we would have all been Islamized. Is that we need to go back to where the problem is in order to solve that problem. If we don't know what the problem is, then there's no way we're going to solve it. I think what Victor said, Pan-Africans are emotional. Probably he has a point. The thing is, for you to decolonize, you need to decolonize your mind. You need to awake. You need to be woke to realize what is happening. But unfortunately, majority of our people have been zombified. We are all zombies, living under capitalism, living under Christianity, living under Islam. And that itself is working against us because we can't agree on anything, can we? We can't see ourselves for who we are. We are Africans. That's the first thing. And we need to rally around that and build from there. But we cannot, while we have been taught, I'm a capitalist or I'm a socialist. Socialism is the best. Capitalism is the best. No, Africa is the best. Africa's interests have to come first. Then you know what they did with colonialism? Colonialism was a system which was like a manufacturing system, working in an industry, where you have at the top the colonizer at that time. And under the colonizer, he will choose a few locals who he trusted to supervise the others. Those supervisors were the ones who were taught and given colonial education to lead us at independence. What do you expect will happen to us after that? We will continue along that path, along that same system. Is that system that was ushered in by the colonial master, until we wake up and realize that we need to go back to our roots and be who we are first. Then there's no way, even this discussion here is useless. Then if someone says Pan-Africans are emotional, then he probably has to come up with something that works, something that takes into account Africa's material resources and make sure that the Africans can benefit from that, because right now we are not benefiting from that. And there's something, I forget an English name, but it's an illusion. We are living under illusion at the moment, because we have people who look like us leading us. I call them misleaders, because they don't know, they don't have a clue. Not that they don't have a clue, they actually know a clue, but they are being told what to do. Mobutu was told what to do against Lumumba, and then in the end, he became the key man in Congo who the Americans had to work through. And he did everything he wanted with the Congo, because it benefited him. But we need to work against that. We have to make sure that our people have enough on the food on the table. We are not going to hit the people who don't understand or hit the people who are hungry. We need to deal with the poverty we have. The material poverty we have in Africa is leading us to where we are right now, into this illusion in which we have people who are serving other masters, making as if they are serving us. But because we have been told that under capitalism, you can do anything you want, we tend to think every man for himself and God for all. No, that's not what the African is. The African is not every man for himself and God for all. We are communalists, not communists, communalists. We thrive better under Ubuntu, under communalism. We are social beings as Africans. But that hasn't happened. I think Sita Shola mentioned that. But that comes again from being taught to hate yourself, being taught to fear each other, one another. We need to graduate from that. But we have been taught fear. And that fear is making us to operate at the lower level of our consciousness. I'm going to finish my submission by reading what Dr. John Henrik Clark said. To control a people, you must first control what they think about themselves and how they regard their history and culture. And when your conqueror makes you ashamed of your culture and your history, he needs no prison walls and no chains to hold you. Africa is the largest prison in the world. That's why the African youth are trying to escape into the Mediterranean. Some of them are going even to America, to Mexico, just to get into the United States. Because of what? Because of commercialization that Africa has gone through. We have been taught that the goods that come from the West, that come from Europe, are the ones which are best served for the African people. We need to go back, my people. We need to go back to being ourselves. Otherwise, will continue being slaves to other nations for eternity, for perpetuity. Okay? So answering your question, I think I referred to this in the beginning when I said the World Bank, IMF, and everything else, they were the systems that were put in place by the then Western countries, which were winning the war against Nazi Germany. And Russia was not even involved at that time. Then when we got independence, it means we were submerged into that system, which does not serve us. The only way that Africa has to win this is for Africa to awaken, Africa to move away from this system which don't serve them, and Africa to fight for a system that is inclusive. The system has to be inclusive to work. The problem here with the IMF is that the IMF will come in and say to you, privatize. How do you privatize when you don't have resource capacity in your own country? It's again making the Western companies to come and buy your national resources at a cheap price. And the neocolonialism continues, the wheel continues. We have to break that wheel somewhere.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Coco.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Brother Coco. Indeed, you have expounded a lot on this topic, and we appreciate that. I say Brother Ras Pala from South Africa's hand is up, and I think Senator wants also to come in from Zimbabwe. But yes, Brother Ras Pala, can you come in? There are contexts on my screen you can be able to respond to if you want to respond to the ratings on the screen. But also, anybody who feel free to come in should come in. Before I read this, yes, Senator, can you come in?
Yeah, thank you so much. Greetings to all of you. I want to just give my my small contribution towards the issue of Africanism, Pan-Africanism. But I want to, first of all, by agreeing and accepting that if you are to win a war, we must be emotional. Africans are now faced with the last war of liberation. We got the independence, it's true, but the independence was just a displacement of a white person by a black person. Who designed the system of governance that we are currently using today? The system of governance was designed by a white person. What we did from the war, we simply defeated the white man and replaced replaced him or her with the black person, inheriting the system of oppression. We are aware that the colonialists designed systems that were favoring them, which were very exclusive to the black majority. But all African countries have continued to rule their countries using the Western system, which was only white designed, exclusive of the black majority. So that was our first mistake. However, we have now realized that we need to fight a new war. So the Pan-Africanism is a platform to fight the last phase of our freedom. The systems that were designed by the whites captured our mindset and subdued us to be subordinates of the white imperialism. The whites continue to set standards for us. A black person always wants to act to reach to standards that were set by the white colonialists. As long as we are still in that state or that mode, development is not going to come. Because one speaker said, when the colonialists came, they dealt with our being, our culture, our identity, and our originality. They destroyed it. They designed so many systems that were put in place, such as religion, the type of education that we went through. All that was done to divide us. All that was done to make us lose confidence. All that was done to have no footing. Africans have no footing on their own land. We are floating. We want to reach some certain standards set by the whites. So as long as we are in that state, it will be very difficult for us to develop our own countries. We are victims of the imperialism. It goes back as far as the slave trade. Remember, our forefathers were working in the Western world for more than 400 years. Immediately after that, they then went for scramble of Africa, which was colonialism. The colonialism subdued us to abuse and the extraction of our natural resources to build Europe and America, while they were being used as cheap labor. All that processes were done to destroy us, to destroy our being. They then designed and crafted education across Africa. The education that we elders got and our forefathers got was not done for us. It was done for us to work as a white-collar job, cheap labor to the white system. So it is important for us to realize, we heard many speakers say, let me just repeat this. We have to go Afrocentric in every culture, in every sphere of life. Let it be education, let it be environment, let it be political, let it be social. Everything will have to go towards an Afrocentric system. It is my desire that at the highest level of our continent, which is African Union, there must have an office of Pan-Africanism to design and make sure that we impress upon every African country to start thinking or institutionalizing Afrocentric issues so that we can detach from the Western influence. As long as we remain attached to the Western influence, forget about developing the country, forget about being innovative, to invent, forget about new machine, new technology, forget about those things, because you are not really footed to your ground. You are floating, you have no confidence, you don't know yourself, you have no identity, you have no culture. So you are not a human being who is a full human being. So we need to go back to the roots, and start looking at the number one thing that we must look at, as far as I'm concerned, is the governance system. It is the governance system which makes us weak. It is because we are controlled by the Western governance system, controlled by IMF, controlled by the World Bank. Our African president right now across Africa are not in charge. They are trying to be in charge. They are trying to be in charge. They are struggling to be in charge, but they are not in charge of our own issues in Africa. They are not in charge about our natural resources, such as land, minerals. We're not in charge at all. We always want to act so that we can please Joe Biden, we can please France, we can please Britain. We don't have any focus towards our own decisions. So we need to really go back and say, let us redesign an Afrocentric governance system. Let us throw away the Western minister, the French minister, the American governance system. Let it be theirs. Let us go back to our roots. We have systems that we're using well before colonialism. Those systems need to be developed to the modern world right now. We had systems that we're using, which are almost similar across Africa. If you go to Western, Northern, Eastern, Southern, Central Africa, there's something that was common about Africans, how we're governing ourselves, how we're distributing natural resources, how we're distributing food, how we're working. We need to look at those systems and develop them so that these systems, if they are developed, they are then put in schools, primary education, secondary education, university education, so that at the end of the day, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, Africa must develop an Afrocentric governance book, which will be taught in universities. We do away with the Chinese-centric systems. We do away with the American-centric system, Eurocentric systems. Let's do away with them. Those are their own systems. Let's develop our own. It is, in my view, if we have an Afrocentric governance, we'll have total freedom in Africa. We'll have total independence in Africa. We'll be able to then interact with the other world at the same level. We will not be feeling inferior because we are not using their systems. Because we are using our own systems, we remove inferiority complex among Zimbabweans, among Africans. One speaker said, how is it that the Africans are the poorest on earth, yet they are sitting on the richest continent on earth. It is because we have no governance system to convert our natural resources to beneficiation. It is because we are always looking to the outside world to come and extract our mineral resources. We are waiting for the Russians to come, waiting for the Chinese to come, waiting for the British, French, and everything else. We are not doing it on our own because we are governed by other people. Our president are secondary. The primary presidents are outside the world. So we need to wage up a revolution. The third revolution is what we must fight for right now. But it must be fought by every African country. It must be coordinated by the African Union. I do believe as we talk as Pan-Africanists right now, let us model it towards that. Let us make sure that we have an office in Ethiopia, an office that is coordinating the whole world, influencing every African president to detach from imperialist influence, to detach from Britain, detach from France, detach from America, so that we remain as a solid unity as Africans.
Thank you, Senator.
I do believe we'll achieve it. We are talking right now. We are advocating for this. I'm happy the way we are sharing. We are understanding what we're supposed to be doing. What's now required is an action plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator, for those wonderful contributions from Zimbabwe. Indeed, just to inform you that as a consciousness study class, of course, we are looking forward to next year, probably start of January or February, to ensure that we can set up our Afrocentric, of course, committees across key sectors we find very important for Africa, which include economics, law, politics, religion, and all those other areas, so that they can work through some documents that by the end of that year, 2024, probably by December, we can be able to produce some Afrocentric manuals. We can be able even to come up with an Afrocentric constitution that can then be adapted by different countries in Africa. We can be able to come up with an Afrocentric leadership or governance system, Afrocentric economics, education, religion, and the rest. So these are work that we now have to move towards another level, where we bring experts and committee experts to sit together, either virtually, have a public participation, either virtually, where people can give in their inputs, so that by the end of 1 year can be able to come up with these manuals in all parts that then can be adapted, implemented, or ratified, or even practiced across the continent. So this is the direction we must push this conversation to an extent that now we must produce documentation as a guidance in our spiritual angle and all angles that are necessary. Then after that year, it's just a matter of lobbying for implementation and adaptation, or even ratification, so that we can start to work out, because I think we are at the time of now action. We've talked enough, but we cannot stop talking until we start acting enough. So as long as we have not acted enough, we must continue talking enough. Then it must instigate the acting and the talks. So thank you very much for that, Senator. We are only having 10 minutes to go. Permit me to read this text on the screen, then I'll give Comrade Anane and then Raz Lawrence before I call on Sister Myra probably to give us part of our closing remarks, as she has been here for some time. It says that in the same way, a mass pressure made it possible for an African leader to oppose independence. So today, mass pressure make it impossible. Or in the same way as mass pressure made it impossible for an African leader to oppose independence, so today, mass pressure make it impossible for him or those puppets to oppose African unity. Those who are against it can only show their opposition in direct ways by suggesting that the pace towards it is too fast, that this or that plan is impracticable, or that there are procedural difficulties which prevent them assisting in formulating a practical plan for it. The case for African unity is very strong, and the instinct of mass of the people right. It is only when the artificial boundaries that divide her, which is Africa, are broken down so as to provide for viable economics unit and ultimately a single African unit. So this is what we are looking for, and let me give Anani to come in. That we say a single Africa unit, that Africa will be able to develop industrially for her own sake and ultimately for the sake of a healthy world economy. A common currency is needed, and communication of all kinds must be developed to allow free flow of goods and services. Anan, kindly come in.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is Anani Premo. I'm a Ghanaian. It's what you said. You know, I like the comment that our lady said the other time. You know, Africa, we've been talking too much. I think, in my point of view, anything that brings peace in Europe and America or Asia is a curse in Africa. As she put it, we've been pointing hands to Europeans and Americans. We know they did the bad thing. Colonialism is past. Neocolonialism is in different form. Let's take, for my point of view, neocolonialism does not exist anymore. The word is globalization. They brought globalization. I am an economist, to develop many countries so that you can transport your goods, whatever you produce, around the globe. You understand me? But globalization is exploiting Africa. You know why? We can't benefit from anything. If you go to Iran, let's take it, those Middle East countries, a country like India, they were all poor like African countries. But through globalization, those countries has developed. Globalization has brought many opportunities to African countries, but African economies has not transformed enough away from dependence on what? Our own raw materials. And thus, many remains on the bottom rungs on global supply. All our economies are what? Consumer economies. We only consume. And what can we do to help ourselves? When we watch the TV, the Western media, we can see that Iran, a country like Iran, Russia, and North Korea, they don't have economy. They are dying of hunger, or blah, blah, blah. No, they live better than Europe and America. I'm telling you from today. I haven't been there, but I know. Because the Western media don't want you people that they've exempt themselves from the global market and they are living good. They want you to believe in them. This is what they are doing. I'm not saying Africa should leave the United States or the Western countries and go to China for technology transfer or go to Russia for technology transfer. I'm not saying this, but if we can do that, it may help us. And the West may not allow us to do it because they are the only people who can transfer technology to Africa. How long have we been with the West? Since slavery time. If they have the mind to develop Africa, brothers and sisters, they will have done it. Donald Trump warned North Korean president, he should be careful not to transfer the technology of manufacturing to the wrong hands, which is in Africa. We have the wrong hands. They don't want us to do that. So what we have to do is, we have to try something to produce things ourselves. There are many, sanctions under Russia. Russia has driven away, sacked all foreign companies, Coca-Cola, everything, Pepsi, everything that produce through there, and replace it with their own. Foreign car makers are off. They've replaced it with their own. Now their economy is growing because the West, if you rely on them, you are going to die as we are dying in Africa for over 700 years. But we can't talk of it because we have our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and in America. So we are short of West to render the good, the real West. Because they don't know over there, they don't know what is happening in Africa. So when it comes to, let's take it, African voting, you can see that Africa is divided. Some African countries follow Russia and China, others like Ghana and mostly West African countries that we are more
Comrade, we are about to come to an end.
To control. Okay, I'll end soon. We are on the West. So what Africa, in my point of view, have to do to develop ourselves is to manufacture. And by doing something bigger, one can do it cheaper. If you produce a mass quantity of particular products, I mean, I'm talking about consumer products. I mean, the people will live okay, they will eat better and healthier and cold. No one will try to come to Europe and die in the Mediterranean Sea. So the only thing to liberate Africa is go to the manufacturing sector. We can't depend on our raw materials every day. We have cocoa, we have diamond, we have this. We don't have factories to produce them there. So you want Europeans to go and buy one bag of cocoa, 500,000. How much the businessman will get? You can't get anything from it. So we have to produce them there in our countries, everything at all. We have to go to machinery. Machinery is the way. If a country fails to produce something or go to machinery, it's a failure. Africa will continue to talk. Hundreds, thousands of years, our problem will not be solved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade, and thank you for your contributions. We are having 2 minutes or 1 minute to end. Russ, Lawrence, kindly, if you can come in very quickly before we end.
Yes, I will. Two things. One, we want to give thanks to the European for colonizing us because they have unified us in our blackness. We don't appreciate it enough, but we must come to that because all of tribalism, all of the issues that cause us to sell each other and divide each other and distract each other is now at end. We are close at hand and we will win. The other thing is, to my economic beloved brother, my economist, you must also understand that China sells itself cheaply, its labor cheaply, in order for its own development to become the second power in the world as we speak. You cannot get too far if you don't develop your defense. If you don't have a weapon that could shoot the missiles out of the sky. We just saw in Palestine a resistance that happened by the Palestinian over to get back their land, and they are decimated because they have not developed a weapon to be able to stop the incoming missile. Israel would have been damaged if it did not have the ability to stop flying missile. We must also be appreciative of those who gave to us, our ancestors who came before. I, for one, look at His Imperial Majesty, just like my brother here look at Nkrumah. His Imperial Majesty does not get enough credit, but we must really digest what he's given us, the tools that he's given us, the guns that he's given us, the tools and the process he has given us for our liberation. But again, the primary point I want to give us for us to meditate on is that we are now unified in our blackness, and we must take down all of the barriers between each other. Give thanks.
Thank you. We've come to an end, unfortunately. I don't think if we allow more speakers to come in, maybe till next time, because we are actually 1 minute late. And I'll just want to call on Sister Myra to read for us the words in the screen that are on yellow. As we end this class today, maybe she can give her last remarks. Sister Myra? Sister Myra, are you able to see what's in our screen? If Sister Myra is not able to do that, then
Hello.
I'll call on Sister Myra.
You're calling me Marie.
Not Marie. We have Myra and you have Marie. I was asking Sister Myra.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sister Eze, are you with us? Sister Eze?
Yes.
Yeah, kindly read for us the words on the yellow in the screen so as we bring our meeting to an end.
Okay. Just the ones in yellow.
Yes.
Okay. Something in the nature of an economic revolution is required. Our development has been held back for too long by the colonial type economy. We need to reorganize entirely so that each country can specialize in producing the goods and crops for which it is best suited. With economic unity, those countries in Africa which are beginning to establish modern industries would benefit from wider markets. We would all be in a better bargaining position to obtain higher prices for our goods and to establish adequate taxation of foreign factor earnings. In fact, a whole new pattern of economic development will be made possible. Agriculture could be modernized more quickly with more capital at its disposal. Industries on a larger and more economic scale could be planned. These could afford to make use of new techniques involving heavy capital outlay. Smaller plants planned to meet only national needs are likely to have higher costs and are eventually less able to reduce costs than optimum sized units. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Eze, and thank you everyone who has joined our class today. Indeed, this is coming to an end of our class, and our guiding reference to this class today was Kwame Nkrumah's quote on the page 189 of this book, 187 of this book, on the mechanisms of neocolonialism, where he says, and I quote again as we come to an end of this class, he says in page 187, it says 7, that in order to halt foreign interference in the affairs of developing countries, it is necessary to study, understand, expose, and actively combat neocolonialism in whatever guise it may appear. For the methods of neocolonialists are subtle and varied. They operate not only in the economic field, but also in the political, religious, and cultural spheres. Comrades, once again, thank you very much for this class. We have actually come to a formal end of our class today, and we would like to appreciate your presence. We'll be having another class on Thursday for our studies, every Thursday, 1900 GMT, for consciousness study and the consciousness study. Then on Saturdays, next Saturday, we'll be having a presentation by Brother Kwame Gonza. We'll be presenting on the connection of Africa or unification of Africa through railway transport. And on Tuesday, of course, we'll be having our Kiswahili classes. This is what you do every day. If you actually want to get this recording, it will be available on our YouTube channel, which is Consciousness Study Group. On our YouTube channel, all our classes are always there. We have over 40 to 50 classes recorded and on our YouTube channel. You can always catch up with us. If you want to join our WhatsApp group, kindly feel free to contact me through the post or the link you found on this. And also feel free to ask for this recording anytime. You can also join our broadcast list if you're not in our broadcast list anytime so that you can be part of this conversation. Without wasting my time, comrades, I would like to appreciate your presence. I'm humbly and dearly touched by your and moved by your contribution and everything else you've done. May our ancestors lead you towards this night and tomorrow. And as we gear towards the new year, may we all start a new year more revolutionary and more stronger together. For our solidarity is the most important thing to our survival as the Blacks wherever we are. We must stand together. Our unity is our strength. Thank you very much, and may you have actually a blessed evening, and a blessed, of course, morning, because I'm already on the morning part of Sunday. It's 12:06 a.m. in Kenya. Thank you very much. Blessed.